to truly know what life is all about, you must first not know what it is all about. Now, since almost everyone assumes, believes, thinks that they understand life, that becomes a barrier to true understanding. Because over the years, you have collected a series of impressions, ideas, what you call moralities and guides, which you have picked up accidentally from 10,000 sources. Now, the mind's a very peculiar instrument in that once it picks up an idea from any source, from the worst possible source, once the mind picks up an idea, it tends to become possessive over it. It tends to say, this is my idea. Then it goes to the next stage and says, this is not only my idea, but my life depends upon following it, believing it, protecting it. And regardless of how nonsensical, how self-destructive the ideas may be, human beings will fiercely protect them, thinking, listen to this please, thinking that they are protecting their own life, when all they're doing is picking up a collection of ideas that have made them what they are today. So look at the strange situation. A man, a woman, will angrily insist on having his way, on saying, this is the way I have to live, and don't you dare try to change it or interfere with it. And take a look at the very life that that individual is protecting with all his strength. A life that's dominated by worry, by not knowing what life is all about, not knowing what the individual is all about, and not even understanding this fierce self-protection, especially when reality, truth, something higher comes along and tries to tell them, tries to say, look, sir, look, miss, what you're living by is not you at all. You have taken it as being you, and you think you are fighting for your survival when you're really protecting the kind of a life that has punished you up until now. You try to get through to people, tell them what they are doing against themselves, and you'll find it very, very difficult. Reality itself becomes the enemy. So you see the position we're in. We're in the position where we have taken thousands of thoughts, collected them into our personal life, assimilated them, and think that they are now our actual life. And to repeat, it's extremely difficult to get through to a man or to a woman. It's just difficult to explain to them because they think, they are quite sure that you're attacking them. The man thinks if you give him some idea that's higher, that will set him free of himself, he actually thinks that you're going to put him into prison instead of setting him free. So all that we're going to talk about tonight requires a good deal of very patient self-investigation, receptivity, and above all, it requires that you look inwardly at yourself, even as you're hearing this talk tonight, and seeing where there's all sorts of defenses, all sorts of disagreements. Why do you disagree with truth? This is what you're hearing. These are the words tonight that could set you free of the one thing which you need to be set free of most of all, which is yourself. You know that, don't you? If you didn't have yourself as an enemy, where would you have any enemies? You sense the truth of that, do you not? If you were a perfectly free human being, not offended by anything because you're above all offenses, If you were a free human being, who or what out in that world could make you angry, could make you afraid, could make you nervous? Who or what could upset you at all? Nothing at all. Please, whatever you do, come back again and again to the point that there's just one problem. And you see it every day when you look in the mirror. Someday, by the way, you might make a little exercise of looking in the mirror and telling yourself what you see there. What kind of a person is there? Look at your face, look at your expressions. Look and see if you are at ease with yourself or whether you're looking at someone who's very ill at ease, living with his own nature. Then, don't be discouraged by what you see, but simply say, all right, this is the situation, this is where something has to change, and instead of fighting from now on, I'll investigate. Instead of thinking that I have to hang on to my past, instead of thinking that all my collected thoughts are my protection, instead of thinking that, think something very brave. Think that just maybe, you have made a mistake somewhere. And with a good deal of self-honesty, you'll see that that is true. That you have been very, very badly misled by society. Very badly misled by everyone you've met, as a matter of fact, because they don't understand life, they don't understand themselves, and they passed it on to you. Let me illustrate it. Here's a man who's a gold mining expert. He knows where to find gold. He's found gold up in the mountains. And a number of people come to him regularly, every day, and they ask him, sir, you are an expert in finding gold in the mountains. Please help us to find gold. It's a pretty good idea, don't you think, by the way, to pause a minute in the story, to go to someone who can tell you the truth instead of someone who misleads you? You had better look very close to see how you have accepted wrong advice all your life, and now is the time to stop it. Right now, for your sake. Don't you want to do something for yourself? Truly do something for yourself that's different from anything you've ever done before? You have a marvelous opportunity tonight. Anyway, here's the gold mining expert. And a couple dozen people come to him one morning and they say, sir, we understand that you know where there's gold. Please show us where it is so we can go and collect it for ourselves. So he takes them outside of his cabin, out in the mountains. And he says, now first, ladies and gentlemen, look to the left. And they look to the left and they see an immense mountain over on the left. He says, next, please look on the right. They look on the right and there's another mountain. And he says, now please listen very carefully to what I'm going to tell you. You will not find gold in the left mountain, left-hand mountain. Don't go there. You won't find anything that you want. Now look again at the right-hand mountain. This is where you'll find gold. This is where I've found gold. Go to the right mountain, not to the left. Because that's where I've found it. That's where you can find it. So he gave them a few more instructions, and finally they thanked him and they started to walk away from him, and they turned toward the left. And they kept walking toward the left until they disappeared from sight. The next day, the very same thing happened again. Man had a group of people who wanted to go prospect in the mountains. He said, don't go left, go right, and you'll find the gold that you want. They said, thank you, sir, and they walked away to the left, and they went toward the left mountain. This happened every day for several days. Finally, one man who had been standing aside, observing all that was going on, he came over to the man who found gold, and he said, what a strange situation. I've been watching everything that's going on, and I don't understand it. You've told the people very clearly they shouldn't go left, they should go right if they want to find gold. And 1 second after you told them to go right, they went left. What's it all about? And the man who found gold said, well, I must tell you, this is a very common occurrence. It happens all the time. I've been doing this for many, many years. And here's the problem. People have been told by their fathers, by their parents, that there's gold in the left-hand mountain. They were told by their grandparents. They were told by books they read. They were told by society that there's gold in the left-hand mountain, and they never find it. Every once in a while, the gold finder said, someone will listen carefully, and they'll obey instructions, and they'll go right, and they'll find the gold where I said it was. Understand the connection between that and human nature. Now look. Either you have found true life or you haven't. Either you have found gold or you haven't. Now I ask you, right now, you answer to yourself. I already know the answer. Have you found gold or not? You have not, and you know it. Gold. What are we talking about? We're talking about, for one thing, you being in command of your own life, of your own actions. We're talking about you not fearing every new event that comes along, every circumstance, every crisis, every stranger. We're talking about you living from your real nature instead of what was passed on to you. All right. Who have you been listening to then up to this point in your life? You have been listening to a society, to a world, to so-called experts who have never found gold, and they tell you where to find it. Now, isn't that ridiculous? I will advise you what I've advised many times before. When anyone tells you that he's found spiritual gold, when anyone tells you that he knows the answers to life, you would show the highest form of intelligence by very carefully studying that human being who says he knows. Go ahead, please do. You do it anyway, but I want you to do it with a very special purpose. I want you to look at his face, and his eyes, and his manner, especially when he's off guard. And I want you to decide for yourself whether this person or that person who gave you this advice, whether they know what they're talking about or not. The answer will always be, no, they do not. Because look what they have given you. You have taken it, and you have not found gold for yourself. Proof. You want the proof of all we've talked about so far? I want to give you a phrase, and you might want to write it down sometime or remember it. Extremely important. Just consists of two words. It's called the inevitable breakdown. Inevitable breakdown. All right. When those people went off to the left where there was no gold, and they searched around frantically for days, for weeks, for years, and didn't find gold, they're going to break down. Of course they are. They had all these hopes and all these expectations, and they decided to go in the direction that they wanted to go in instead of the true advice. They ended up exactly where they belonged, where they chose to end up, and they didn't find anything. They didn't find any gold. When that happens, when a person is without spiritual gold, you know very well what he does because you do it several times yourself every hour. And it's called the inevitable breakdown. This means that all our bluffs and our fakery and our pretenses, that we know where we're going, that we know what we're doing, the breakdown is inevitable, isn't it? Do you know when you get irritated that that's the inevitable breakdown? Look at it, please. Millions of people around this world will tell you that they have the answers to life. They have it in religion or philosophy, or they have it from a book, or they have it in their social excitements. They will tell you that they have the answers. They insist that they know what it's all about. Make a lot of money, have a lot of fun. Look for the inevitable breakdown, and you tell me whether they really know the answers or not. It's a very sad state. And let me tell you right now, before you go into sick sentimentality, which is destructive, over anyone, including yourself, ask who made the choice. If you made that choice, you can reverse it. You can make another choice. You can make a choice of something that is above everything that you have accumulated from this weary world. You can choose to drop whatever has been on your back, making you tired, and you are tired, aren't you? I know you are, and you know you are. See, you're afraid of the next breakdown, and I guarantee you that it will come along. It may have even been happening while you're listening to this tonight. You may have even been resisting it in some way because there's a part of you that says, I already know, so why should I take anything new? Let me give you another little example. These examples are human beings, not just pretty little stories, and they have a very definite and profitable point to them. Here's a young man who grew up, and as all young people do, he had his great ambition in life. And his ambition was to become a wild animal hunter, go out in the jungles and capture wild animals. This was his great desire in life and his dream. And he pictured himself with the name in the paper and on television and so on. So he grew up. But one thing he didn't do, he didn't learn anything about wild animals or about capturing them, didn't know anything about zoology, anything like that. All they thought about was the glory of becoming a great animal hunter with his name in headlines. So as he grew up, he looked around for some opportunity to prove how great he was, even though he hadn't taken any training in it. So he saw an ad in the paper one day that said some foreign country wanted an expert wild animal trainer to come over and rid the jungle of some fierce animals that were marauding the countryside and attacking human beings. So here's what he did. Now, are you following the parallel? He told some lies and he forged some documents, and they accepted him as the wild animal trainer. And when he got over there and went out into the jungle, he got scared, and the animals chased him instead of him capturing the animals. The inevitable breakdown. Do you understand? If you are living in pretense, it is so essential for you to know that you're doing that so correction can be made. All right, now you try to get out of this. You won't succeed. If I was to ask you, how many of you are miserable, unhappy, confused, hostile, you'd all raise your hands, wouldn't you? All right, now look, this isn't attacking you. It's not accusing you of a thing. We're trying to find out the way out. So, if you have all these pressurizing emotions, thoughts, attitudes, ways of life inside you, look what a marvelous revelation that is. It's not shameful to be scared. It's not shameful to be angry. That is a state. What is shameful is to refuse to admit it. Your body knows when you're angry. Your voice knows when you're afraid. Why can't we simply say, look, how astonishing. I'm far worse off than I ever believed I was. Well, what do you know? Now with that honesty, you have the facts on hand. And you can then go on to say, you know, there must be a lot of those things in me that I heard that taught. There must be a lot of pretense in me, a lot of fakery. There must be an awful lot of me that says, I know when I really don't because I have no gold. Instead, I'm carrying a sack of rocks around on my back. And that's pretty burdensome and pretty painful. See what a little simple self-honesty can do for a human being if you'll simply look and see his condition. Why should you be ashamed of it? It doesn't belong to you. Your anger doesn't really belong to you, but you think so, and that's why you're ashamed. You're not your anger. You're not your fear. They've taken you over, and that's another long story. By the way, haven't you ever noticed anger take you over in spite of yourself? And you tried to hide it from someone? Even someone close to you, because you want them to think well of you and think that you do indeed have the answers. All right. I want to give you a method, a technique, which you can begin to use in the interesting, fascinating, and somewhat long road back home. You're not at home now, are you? Back home. Shall I make it a little stronger? Back to authentic sanity, authentic decency, authentic goodness. Back to where you really belong. And you know, I know that all of you, there's a part of all of you that has a yearning to get back home where it's safe. See, you're not safe when you're out faking and bluffing that you can tame the animals. When you're faking, the animals get you. Think of the term self-absence. Self-absence. Have you noticed, by the way, that you're absent from yourself all the time? Have you ever been watching a movie on TV and you're watching it and you're interested in it and the story unfolds and telephone rings and you have to go answer it and you're gone for a couple minutes, and when you get back, you're not quite sure what's happened, what the story is all about. You've lost it. Telephone rings again and you have to go out for another 3 minutes this time. When you get back, the story is pretty jumbled, isn't it? Now, would it be a correct assumption to say that your life is pretty jumbled? And would it be also equally accurate to say that is because you're absent from yourself all the time? We have used a figure of speech quite often, which I'll repeat to you, which is quite valuable and very basic. And that figure of speech is, keep your mind where your body is. Can you see all that's implied in that? Keep your mind where your body is. If you're walking down the street, be aware of yourself physically. You'll be a lot safer on that street with the traffic out there, by the way. But it's far more profitable than that. Keep your mind where your body is so that those two parts of your psychic system are unified. Now, self-absence, when you get up and answer the phone of some wild thought or of some daydream, some mental movie, this means you're absent from yourself. You're not watching yourself. You're not watching the story of your own life unfold. And when you do that, when you're absent, you've lost something. You've done it many times, have you not? Where you're walking somewhere, walking around town maybe, and you're in one store, and then 10 minutes later you're in another store, but you don't remember walking that whole stretch of streets. You suddenly said, here I am, and a minute ago, you thought it was a minute ago, it was 10 minutes ago. Here I am here, and I didn't even know that I'd left the other place. There's great real magic, spiritual magic, in carrying out all these lessons, teachings that we've covered tonight. Remembering the last one in particular because it's the start of you beginning to understand how you work inwardly. You can catch yourself just about to say something, and you remember that the last time you were about to say something, it was something that was a little bit foolish maybe, and you wish you hadn't said it. This time, if you're keeping your mind under observation at all times, you can see yourself about ready to say something. You can see yourself ready to blurt again, and that very understanding of it gives you command over it, and this command will extend to all of your life, and you'll be a new human being. Well, I have some very interesting news for you tonight. All the prayers you have ever prayed have been answered. Precisely, exactly, 100%. What you have wanted, you have obtained. The kind of an emotional life that you prayed for, you experienced today and last week. The kind of a mental life, the kind of a physical life even, that you have asked for is yours right now as you're seated here. You don't understand that because you don't understand how your psychic system works, because it works so unconsciously, and you have never made a very strong effort to see yourself asking. Now, what asks? Certainly not you in your essential nature, not your real nature. You've been taken over by thousands of ideas and demands and wishes and fears and timidities. You have been taken over by them, and you have been content with what you have been given, and that is your prayer for more. You've never understood, have you? You don't understand why your day repeats itself over and over and over, and unless you wake up, it's going to repeat itself for the rest of your days. And I'll tell you, unless you plunge in to yourself, unless you understand the spiritual laws that are governing your life, you won't see that you do indeed get exactly what you ask for, and it's your old nature, your old preferred nature, because you don't want to change. It's your old nature that is doing the requesting. And your old nature, your shabby little nature, and your shabby little life can only do one thing. It can only ask for more of itself. Now, how do you expect to get anything higher for yourself, which you don't understand at all? How can you expect to get anything different from what you now have when you continually repeat the request for what you already have and more of it? As long as you stay on the level of your present nature, that is your daily prayer, and I will guarantee you, look, I am telling you, I am prophesying your psychological future exactly. You're going to be the same kind of a human being a year from now, 5 years from now, unless, now listen to this, unless you have sense enough, and most human beings don't, maybe you don't either, unless you have sense enough to listen to what you're being told tonight by the truth and say, you know, something struck me as being accurate about what I heard tonight, which is that my life has been described exactly. Of course it has, and you know it. I'm trying to tell you the way to rise above your present miserable little life. Question, as always, do you want it enough to listen and to want enough to look and see the expression on your face as you are seated here right now? Because I'm looking at you, and I can read you. I know that the expression on your face is part of your prayer. I know where it comes from. I know it comes from your inner nature. And I know that that sad defeat that you have, that I can see right in front of me, I know where that comes from. I know it comes from a nature that matches it. Okay. If that's what you want, fine. If there's any one person in this room that wants something different, that is tired of suffering from your own self-centeredness, then you've come to the right place tonight. Now look, whatever your present nature is, follow this and see how true it is. I'm just asking you to see how true it is what I'm telling you. And if you're honest, you can see it. Please notice that you always return sooner or later back to where you started from in your psychological life. You even study spiritual principles, or you make vows that you're going to change. And the next day, you're just as scared as you were the day before. In short, ladies and gentlemen, nothing ever changes. Now, I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to show you why. A bat in a cave lives in a dark place, right? That's what a bat loves. A bat loves a dark place. That's his nature. Bats and darkness go together. The bat comes out, follow this, the bat comes out and he goes out into society, and because of evil magic, the bat is able to change into a Dracula. Into a Dracula who looks and acts and talks like a human being. Now here's Dracula. You've seen him in movies, haven't you? They come out of the cave or wherever, and they come out and they, through camera magic and movies, they change into human beings. And they look exactly like they're a man about town. And they often go about town. You see them at high society places. Modern Draculas go everywhere now. Modernization of the movie. So he comes out and he looks exactly like another human being. Talks like them. If you are a devotee of Dracula, what does he have to do as the daylight comes up? He has to go back to the bat cave, doesn't he? Now look, the whole world, everyone in this world comes out of their bat cave, changes into a Dracula and appears to be a normal human being, and you return back to the bat cave. You do. I gave you 10 minutes already about that. You return to your irritation. You return to your hatred. You see, you hate being trapped by your life, don't you? Don't you? You hate it. And you're going to continue that way unless you absorb what you're hearing tonight. Dracula must always return to the dark bat cave. Now, I have prophesied what's going to happen to every one of you in this room, you wise guys and you wise gals who always know better. Some of you in this room, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, you're going to be in a position where you've got sucked by life, and you're going to vaguely remember what I told you tonight, but you won't even have the decency or the honesty to say, why didn't I listen to what I was told? That is how stupid you are. And you don't even know you're stupid. If you knew you're stupid, you wouldn't be stupid. But you don't even know it. All right. So a bat, Dracula, has to return eventually to the dark cave, which is his unconscious love. You miserable people, I know what you love. You love your misery. You confuse people. I know what you love. You love your confusion. And can you imagine what kind of a human being would be so in love with his own weakness that he refuses to change it? Because it can be changed. Now you tell me, what kind of a man or a woman would cling fiercely to his weakness and stupidity when it's possible to change? How would you describe such a person? I'll leave it to you. You don't like things being left to you, do you? Now you have to face things you've been evading all your life. Then there's a dove. There's a bat and there's a dove. A dove, by its nature, lives in the pretty green and yellow meadow, right? That's where he prefers to fly around, rest, live. The dove's nature is at home in the pretty meadow. The bat's at home in their darkness. The meadow is for the dove. Now, see if you can follow. If the dove, that is a person, a small part of a person that's beginning to wake up, if the dove was to walk toward the bat cave, when he got close to it, he senses that he wants nothing to do with it, doesn't he? His nature says, oh, that's not for me, right? Equally, just equally. The bat comes out and he flies around and he goes over to the pretty green and yellow meadow and all the bright sunshine, and he says, that is not for me. The billions of vicious, draining bats in this world come out of that cave and they go toward that pretty meadow and they say, that is not for me. What is this horrible thing called sunshine and beauty and greenery and colors? What is this horrible place? He says, I'm going to back where it's really comfortable, back to my cave. The vast majority of human beings are only comfortable in their inner sickness. You'll never change them. Now, I wonder if you caught, while I was talking, a beautiful arrangement. I can't tell you how marvelous an arrangement it is for any of you who want to be doves. You're not yet. You know what you're like inside. Aren't you glad that nobody can see it? You know what a monster you are inwardly. You know it and I know it. What a beautiful arrangement. See, the bat wants nothing to do with the meadow, and the dove wants nothing to do with the dark cave. Isn't that listen to me. Listen. You don't have to have anything to do with this dark, miserable, lying, vicious world. You don't have to have anything to do with it, and it doesn't want anything to do with you. Perfect! Are you at the point in your spiritual life where you're so delighted that your sick relatives don't want to come around and see you anymore? Huh? Isn't that nice? Now you know how to get rid of sick people, become truly spiritual, become a dove. And you understand, do you not, that we do indeed make the world in our own likeness? Do you know the kind of world you experience? I'll tell you the kind of world you experience today, all day long. Let's just take today. You experienced yourself. You experienced nothing but your own inner nature. What else could you experience? This is what you are. You talk about those terrible people out there. You are the terrible people. And you've got about 10,000 terrible people inside of you, and you won't even see one of them. You're so dishonest. So we build the world according to the way we are, and isn't it a perfect match? You want to know what human beings are like? Look at the results out there, right? You see it? Did you see it in tonight's news? Do you see what it's like? There was once a country in which everyone in it was confused. They didn't know how to behave. Well, that's the kind of a country everyone lives in, right? People don't know. The government doesn't know how to solve problems. The government caused the problems. But all these people got together, a committee got together, and they said, we're going to find an answer to this solution of aimless wandering. We don't know what to do with ourselves. We don't know how to behave. And, by the way, let me stop just a minute. Do you know what to do with yourself? You don't at all. All you do is hope for an outside attraction to come along and give you a direction or an excitement. That's your miserable life. And You have the nerve to say that you're a self-directed person. You're the block of wood floating down the river, going left and right according as the river goes left to right. Try to get out of that. And anyone can upset you, just as some of you have been upset tonight. If you were free, how come you can be upset by being here? You see, I can trap you every time. The truth can trap you every time. So in this country, they decided to consult some scientists who would build them an electronic man. And so they went to scientists and said, we want to build a leader, someone who will lead the country for us. And of course, since we are men and women of great love and compassion and understanding, we want you to put the qualities that we have into this leader. But most of all, we want you to make him decisive. We'll call him the decisive director when he's finished. Scientists said, sure, we can build it. So they went, spent a lot of money, your tax money, to build the decisive leader, decisive director. And they built him. And they said, well, fine, let's give him a test. So they put him out in this big mall, shopping mall, a bunch of people going back and forth. And they put the decisive director out, who looked just like a human being. They dressed him like you couldn't tell him apart from anyone else. Put him out there. And the director gave a command, go left, to all the people. Everybody ran left. Gave a second command, run right. Everybody ran right. Run north. Everybody ran south. Perfect, marvelous. And did you notice the decisive manner in which he spoke? How positive he was. At last, none of us have to think for ourselves anymore. How marvelous. So they made him the leader of the country. The decisive leader was put up in a big mansion, and he ruled the country. And of course, he gave out all these decisive commands over a period of time. Do this, do that, do that. One time, for example, now you listen to me and see if you can understand what I'm saying. One time, the decisive director even said, go into a financial depression. And they did. They followed the order to go into a financial depression. Next day, it said, next week, month, he said, go into inflation. They went into inflation. Then he said, have both depression and inflation at the same time. And the people did that. I am telling you a true story. Where do you think I'm getting this? I watch the 6 o'clock news. Finally, the decisive director said, go to war. And all the foolish, stupid people said, our leader has spoken. And besides, look at all the rewards from war. Selling ammunition and medals and great dramatic parades down Broadway. Marvelous. So they had a war. But something happened on the way to the victory stand. They lost the war. And do you know what they did? They looked at that decisive director and they said, you have lost the war. And they dismantled him and threw him in the junk heap. They dismantled him not because he got him into war, but because he lost it. If he had won the war, he had been the greatest hero of all time in the school books to mislead millions and millions of more young, innocent children who look in the school books and say this man was a hero because he killed 10 million people. One more thing. They said, well, we're without a leader, and we better have another leader. So they built him, and they said to the scientists, now something went wrong last time, obviously. You didn't put enough of our love and compassion and understanding and spirituality, which we have, into him. So we're going to tell you all about how to be loving and spiritual, and you put these ingredients in the new leader. So they gave him what love and compassion and understanding they had, and the new leader did the very same thing as the old leader, and that's the story of the destruction of that country. They built a leader according to their own image. Well, what do you suppose is the cause? What do you suppose is the cause of all our problems today? Now, I want to remind you of something, by the way. Whenever you think of the government, don't think of some big building somewhere, or don't think of a word, legislature, or something like that. I want you to think of an individual, just one. Start with one. The government consists of that man over there, and of that man over there, and that woman over there, and that woman over there, and every one of them is a human being. Now, what kind of a human being is that woman and that man? Never mind the word government. What kind of an individual is he? Now, you think that's obvious. Now, you watch, when you hear the word government and legislature, how you think of something vague. Don't be deceived anymore. You think of any individual, and you'll understand very well why the world is what it is. So you're going to have to do something different for yourself, aren't you? And I'll tell you what to do. You might want to write this down. It's called a declaration of intention. Now listen carefully to that phrase, declaration of intention. You know what an intention is? You intend to do something, to change something. You make a declaration of intention that you're going to start to be a different kind of a human being because you don't like the kind of a human being that you have lived with up to this point of your life. Now, when you make it, I want to make it very clear to you that when you make your intention to change yourself, it won't have any force behind it at all. It's just words for you so far. But the very fact that you're going to make the intention means that at least to one degree you understand the need to make it, right? That there's a necessity for you changing yourself. But don't be like most people in which they think that the intention is the achieved result. What you're doing is making a mark on a map that says you're going to proceed to Paris. Now, making a mark on the map that you're going to go to Paris doesn't mean you're in Paris. It means you make the intention of going to Paris. So when you make the intention, that is the first step. It'll be very feeble, it won't have any strength behind it, but this is where you have to start. And look how truly honest and compassionate truth is. It tells you to do at any moment what you can do, and you can do that. Then after a little while, you can do something else. You can add a little feeling behind your intention because you do want to change. And understanding comes in to give you force over all these things. So you have the intention that starts off, and now listen, please. Remember we talked about your negative prayers being answered. This is a very positive one, and that will be answered. Now, be prepared for something that's most people would find completely confusing, bewildering. But see if you can put it together and understand what is meant. Your intention, your declaration of intention to become a different kind of a person means that you must eventually come to the place where you are no longer going to associate with yourself. Clear? Clear? I told you you were in love with yourself. What kind of a self is it? Oh, I'll tell you, any human being who finally makes it out, and it is possible to make it out, must pass through a long, grinding period of understanding that his first and present and only love is his sickness. If I was to ask another audience, this audience too for that matter, ask people, how many of you want to find real happiness? Everybody would raise their hand and everyone would lie. Just as a lot of you would lie if I ask you if you want to change your life. Your idea of changing your life is to get more money, get more sex. See what miserable wretches you are? That's your idea of change, to grab something. No wonder you're scared. No wonder you can't think for yourself, from yourself. You make your declaration of intention tonight that you are no longer going to associate with anything belonging inside that bat cave. See, you have to stop doing something. And at the start, when you stop doing something, like going around with your crummy friends, when you stop doing it, you get a sense of loss, which makes you frightened. But if you remember your lessons here, you remember that one lesson is to notice your increased sense of fear over the possibility of losing your old, familiar, batty friends. So you become conscious that you think you're going to lose something, but listen, you're going to lose your hell, which you call heaven. See, the bat's idea of beauty, of freedom, of a nice place to live is the bat cave. That's his idea, what was right. Therefore, the enemy is the beautiful, actual beautiful green and yellow meadow. That's the enemy which must be avoided. Your old nature, right now, I know it and you sense it. Your old nature, as you're listening tonight, tells you, screams at you, don't you dare leave that bat cave and go out to that meadow. And it will tell you that that meadow is the darkness. Because it must say that, because it is saying the darkness is the light. Haven't you seen men and women in madness, in insanity, in rage, in repulsion? Haven't you seen those people talking about love? You stand there, it's so incredible that they can't see their division. You can see by the way they talk that they have no love in them at all. Calling the meadow the wrong place and calling their present darkness the right place. No wonder they are driving themselves crazy. Now, I will ask you, and you answer to yourself, would you like to become sane? Now, what goes with sanity is freedom from fear, command of your own life, an understanding of that bat cave. You know everything about it because you used to live there. You came out of it. You understand it, everything about it. But you only understand it once you get out of it and can look back and remember and see from the light that you're now in. The light tells you what the darkness is like. Darkness is never going to reveal its insidious evil to you. It's going to lie to you. Therefore, you must work and get out and look back, and you'll... Have you ever done that? I'm sure some of you have had the experience that you've said to yourself, how could I have been so cruel? If you have never done that, you are sound asleep. Isn't that interesting? That beginning to see your cruelty and begin to see your insanity, that's a part of real gentleness, the start of it, the start of real sanity. Sanity is happiness. If you're not really happy, happiness has so many false descriptions. Let's use the word free. Use the word content. Content, that's a good one. Content, and yet you understand the world and everything about it. If you are not content, there's something wrong with your mind. Now, would you like to straighten out your mind so that you're content and so that you're not afraid? I'll tell you what you have to do. You have to fly out of that bat cave, and you have to go over toward the meadow, and you must see how terrified you are of it. And I'll tell you what's terrified. Only your old bat nature. That's the only thing, not your real nature. Your real nature yearns for that cave. And all of you in this room have a certain yearning for the meadow, which does not mean you're going to make it. Because when you get over there, you listen to the lies of the bat instead of to the truth that the dove is trying to get over to you. You walk close enough to that meadow and just stay there and let the bat voices inside of you scream all they want and threaten you all they want and hear them urging for you to go back to the darkness. Don't you go. Don't you go. You stand there and let the light tell you a different story, which it will. And the time will come when you're over the 51% mark, when nothing can ever get you to go back to the bat cave. Now you walk increasingly toward the meadow and toward real life, true life, and everlasting life. Everyone wants to act, no one wants to be. Everyone wants to run around, think around, go places and do things. And unless there is being behind the action is mad. And so is the individual. Now, what do we mean by being? You know what action is. Being means to have something that is higher than the action which can direct it. It means that you're not proceeding in your life merely from your own intellect. Now, to define what being is right now to you and to your intellect will not mean anything to you. Because you do not have being, you have an intellect, and you have actions endless. Thinking around, chasing around, all the time trying to convince yourself that all this nervous agitation is taking you somewhere, and what it is doing is taking you away from being, taking you away from a higher level of existence, which, if you were to attain it, could then instruct your actions so they would not end up in ruination as they presently do now. You are not going anywhere. How do you like that statement? How did that hit you? That you are not going anywhere? You know it's the truth. Well, let's rephrase it. You are going somewhere, but it's all within the confines of the swamp. You're paddling and struggling and panting from one end of the swamp to the other. And haven't you noticed in a swamp how uncomfortable it is? If you've never been there, you can at least picture it. Haven't you noticed how uncomfortable it is because you can never put your feet down on solid ground? You struggle and maybe you get one foot on something solid and you think, this is it. And you take the next step and down you go into the water. Isn't this the story of your life, taking one step in what you call a right direction, a satisfying direction, and the next one, and you're right back where you started? You know, a man with amnesia can perform hundreds of actions. Can he not? He's walking down the street away from his home and he gets hit by a board or he falls down and he gets amnesia. What is his life but anything but a series of actions? And have you ever noticed that no matter what he does, if he makes $1,000 a day, if he gets elected president, no matter what happens to a man with amnesia, he is still apart from home, and that is his heartache. Do you think possibly that you might be the victim of a very special kind of amnesia in which you're wandering around not knowing what to do with yourself? And so you leave your life to the slightest chance, to someone who speaks to you, and you're so grateful that they have given you a direction. You're so grateful because you have no direction of your own. And you are not going to have as long as you falsely value what you call action, and the whole world is acting itself into chaos, and look at it if you don't think so. How incredible. Some new political party will get elected to office, and you know exactly what they're going to say, because they all say the same thing. They say, we are going to institute a bold, the word bold is always in it, and people swallow it. We're going to institute a bold new program of action. And stupid human beings clap and cheer. That's what we want, action, because they are deceived by their own actions. And the sheep follow the other sheep into the ditch. You had better pause right tonight and see how you get a little bit of excitement over what you call doing something, going somewhere. And I will guarantee you that that excitement is preventing you from knowing who you really are. You don't know tonight at all. You don't know where you're going, you don't know what you're doing, you don't know what to say, you don't know what to think, and you don't know the way out. You know, we use the illustration of sheep as being followers with good reason. You know how it is. They put what they call a Judas goat out in front with a bell around his neck, and the rest of the sheep see the goat going somewhere, and they follow the goat wherever they follow the goat to wherever he takes them. I'll tell you what you're doing in your inner life, which expresses itself in the outer life. You're following. Now, just slow down. Who are you following? If you ever ask yourself what you're following, I will tell you. You're following the only thing you have, which is your old, inhibited, confused, old nature. All right? What else have you got? What do you have besides that? You have nothing beside that. And you know it. All right. If then you follow your own thoughts and acquisitions and feelings, if you follow that, which you do, where is it going to lead you? The old nature, as I explained before in the matter of the swamp, the old nature will simply lead you to another old condition. The old nature can only lead you, in short, to itself. No wonder you're bored. No wonder you don't know what to do with yourself. Don't you understand that all these excitements that you have put in front of you, don't you understand that they must fade away, because thought itself must fade away? Your thought appears, lives for a few seconds and fades away, and you try to hang on to it. Impossible. And the reason you try to hang on to thoughts, by the way, is because you have invested your false sense of self in it. What are your dominating thoughts? What are they? I don't care what they are, whether you call positive or what you call negative. They're dreary thoughts, self-defeating thoughts, thoughts of the future. You want to know what right action is? Let me tell you what right action is right now. Right action is to cease to cling, cease to cling to any thoughts about future help. Right there. Right action is to not have a future, even. As if the timeless state, just to begin with, can have anything to look forward to. But let's stick with this little avenue that we're going after. You examine your life, and you examine your inner condition, and you will see that what makes you happy is what you, in your delusions, have promised yourself, and now you believe in your own delusory promises, which can never be fulfilled, and this is why you get disappointed, and more than that, tomorrow. Now look, I said that you must have no clinging, no desire for thoughts about future help. Now, you don't even know your own minds to know that you're doing that, so you have to go back farther than you imagine. You don't know how your mind works. You've never seen it operating. You have these little promises that you've given to yourself of how next week, next month, next year, certainly something in the future you say is going to fulfill you, and you have no use at all for the present which could save you. You don't want the present, because if the present was to dominate your life, you wouldn't be in it. And that's what you want. You want to be in your life. And there's no you to be in your life, but you don't understand that. Once more, you must examine yourself to see how you're always holding something in your mind toward the future that's going to what? Be of help to you, going to give you comfort, going to give you a benefit, even the answer to a letter. Could you completely cancel the whole thing? Let me tell you what it should be like. I'm serious. Listen. Someone phones you on the phone when you get home tonight. And it's someone you know. And this person says, "Congratulations. Tomorrow I'm going to mail you a check for $1 million. Now, he's a friend, and you know he means it. He means it. I'm going to mail you a check for $1 million. All right. But you are a wide-awake human being. You understand. You watched yourself walking to the phone. You could feel it as you picked it up. You heard the sound of your voice. You heard the sound of his voice. You saw how you even leaned a little bit against the table as you took the phone. You were wide awake every second. The man said on the phone, "I'm going to give you $1 million tomorrow." If you were wide awake, do you know what you would reply? Okay. If you were wide awake. Tomorrow comes, the phone rings again. You're still... You ahead of me? Again, you walk to the phone, you know you're walking, you feel your feet against the ground. You know, you just had a drink of water. You even know that your mouth feels a little cool because you just had a drink of water just before the phone rang. You understand these things. You see them. You go to the phone, you pick it up, and it's your friend again. And he says, "I've changed my mind. I'm not going to give you $1 million. You say, "Okay." Right? You understand it? Why should you invest in the future when you have everything right now? Oh, but you don't have everything right now, and so you invest in the future, and the phone call always comes. And you get disappointed because you trusted the future. If you were living right now, there'd be no such thing as a future for you. No thoughts to hang on to, nothing to look forward to. No time at all, because you've transcended your intellect where time is created. Now let's talk a little bit more about false action. I'll tell you a little story. There's a man who had a friend in a foreign country. This friend was a newspaper reporter. So this man, let's say he's from the United States, traveled to this European country and met his friend who was a reporter. And the friend said, "I have to cover a political meeting today. If you'd like to come with me, come along. You might find it interesting." So the friend said, "Fine." So they went down to the big government building, and their Congress, Parliament was in session. And here were 200 men and women meeting. The representatives were at a meeting, conducting business and wrecking the country. So the two men sat down and they watched the proceedings. The reporter made notes, and his friend also watched, and he observed a certain thing in particular that interested him. And what he saw, that out of the 200 representatives, that 50 of them were obviously members of a certain political party. They were dressed more or less the same in uniforms, and they sat in a certain section of the hall. And this friend noticed that during the whole proceedings of an hour or so, that the 50 men and women of this certain political party were constantly standing up and criticizing what was going on with the other members. Another member would give a speech, and this particular party would get up and criticize it. Say, we don't like your decision at all. And this went on and on and on. And at the end of the parliamentary meeting, the reporter was asked by his friend. The friend asked the reporter, what's this all about? I noticed that all I did was to criticize the other parties and make no constructive comments at all. And by the way, there would be no constructive comments because a lost person can only offer destructive comments. And the reporter said, oh, it's very simple. They do indeed belong to a certain party. It's called the Indecision Party. And all they do is criticize. They criticize the decisions of everyone else, and they never make a decision themselves. Do you see the point of it? The criticism indecision party is not 50 members, it's millions and millions and millions of human beings, which is false action. Now look, now come on, slow down. Don't you dare think that you understand the false action of simply having a critical spirit. That's what we're talking about. A spirit that needs to criticize, to go into the false action of it, because it gives it a thrill and it sets you apart as someone who is right and the other person is wrong. You watch the jolt that goes on inside of you when you finally see, after years and years of inner work, finally see that what you were getting from your critical spirit and critical words, whether outspoken or silent, what you were getting is pleasure. And you couldn't get enough of the pleasure, could you? And you looked around and searched around and you pounced wherever you could, always criticizing. You always know more than anyone else. You always know best. And all the time you are wrecking your spirit and making being impossible. Because you have made your choice. You have made your choice of foolish action, which gave you the thrill, and you were satisfied with that. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is why you are scared. You're scared because all you have is a very foolish obedience to mechanical impulses inside of you that take you over and tell you to go left and right and up and down. And then you lie about the motives on top of it. You always explain, don't you, why you did that, and it is a lie. You have no idea of why you said that, of why you did that, of why you planned. You have no idea at all. You don't understand the machine. You don't want to understand the machine, because if you did that, you would have to see it as a machine, and you wouldn't be able to live the way you've been able to live up until this time, which is no effort at all but to just follow. Now I want to talk to you about another false action, and oh, what a vast subject. It's called influence. Now, let's get real personal. You get personal. Can you see how much of your life, your energy, and your time is spent doing the following? Now listen to this. Can you see how much of your life is spent in the following? In trying to influence other people to think in a certain way toward you in order for you to gain certain benefits and rewards. Let's go over it again. Look how you smile. Look how you say certain things you know the other person wants to hear. Notice how you are constantly trying to influence another person, and it is only a scared, insecure human being who will ever do that. Since everyone runs around trying to influence other people's thoughts so that they will be favorable to them, everyone is lost. The politicians do it, the religious leaders do it, everyone does it, everyone in the home and out in the factory, wherever. Always some little plan, some little scheme whereby one individual can make another individual think favorable toward him so that the plotter can get what he wants, so that he thinks, and you think, I know you. You think you can put away the pain, and all you do is push away the pain, and it's on a spring that bounces right back and clobbers you. Right? And you know it. What would you do with your life if you didn't spend all this time and energy trying to influence people toward you? What would you do? That's what scares you. If you gave that up, what would you do with yourself? I challenge you to find out. Just find some little area where you're trying to con someone, or you're trying to get something from them, and just don't do it. You know what I mean? Just don't do it. And watch the little bit of insecurity that you had in you all along that you are aware of for the first time. That is mental health, right? Imagine a doctor, or anyone for that matter, who's sick, physically sick. Anyone who's physically sick. But he doesn't want to face it. See the parallel between physical and spiritual. We're talking about the physical in order to illustrate the inner, the spiritual. He's sick physically, but he doesn't want to admit it to himself, and he doesn't want other people to know that he's that way. Just as people who are sick spiritually don't want anyone else to know. So they quote religious books and wear crosses or whatever. Now this sick individual thinks of a plan by which he can influence other people into thinking that he is healthy, not sick. So what he does, he goes out in his garage and he gets a lot of bottles and he gets various liquids and he fills up the bottles and puts the label of medicine on them, puts a little color to make it look good, make it look important. And he takes these bottles of so-called medicine out, and here's what he does. He gives them to his friends. He gives them to his friend. Now follow the parallel of this. Being sick, not wanting to face it, he decides to influence other people, persuade them that he is healthy. So he goes out in his garage and he gets bottles of medicine, or a religious book, if you can see the parallel. And then he goes out and gives these bottles of medicine to other people so that they will say and react as follows. Well, a man who gives away bottles of medicine must be healthy himself. And he hopes, like everything, that he can persuade them into thinking that. And they do. But here's the problem. What he was doing to them, they are doing to him, and he's not aware of it. They're doing exactly the same thing. They are taking their little bottles of medicine and giving it to other people. Have you ever known a generous person? Have you ever given somebody a gift in order to influence their thinking about you so that they would say, there's a person who's healthy, there's a person who is generous, there's a person who is not self-centered. And the reason you are saying that is because you are getting the thrill of having the gift. You don't care about him at all. You're complimenting yourself on getting the gift and thinking that there's some relationship with the other person. The whole world is going around, being sick, finding 1,000 ways to try to persuade other people that they're healthy. And then the people who get the medicine do the same thing back, and this is why it is nothing but madness. I want to tell you that you had better stop right tonight to stop fearing the madness that you are in and that you are a part of. If you fear your own madness of going around and trying to influence other people, if you fear it, you'll never be free of it. And you fear it for a very, very subtle, egotistical purpose. Because the fear itself centers around you. You understand so far what we've talked about a little bit? What we're talking about is you trying to catch yourself in all sorts of false actions, whatever they may be. That is acting with your spiritual eyes closed, not knowing what you're doing, amnesia, doing something in order to get something in return, but you can never get anything in return but what you gave out. The man gave out the colored water, and that's exactly what he got back in return, because that's the level that everyone is operating on. Now I want to tell you essentially what being consists of. B-E-I-N-G, what it really spiritual being consists of. It consists of you not living your own life, which means that you will live your own life. You are living a life right now which you call your own life, which is not really your own life, but an imposition that you have accepted as necessary and as dreadfully permanent. If you were to give up your delusion of a personal life, there's no personal life, there's the delusion of it. If you were to give up your illusion and delusion of a personal life, you would have a life of your own. How many imposters are dwelling inside of you, acting for you, speaking for you, thinking for you? Well, when an imposter acts for you, that imposter is going to get caught first by himself and then by the world. Because imposters can recognize imposters. They may put their arm around them and say, I like you. But they know they're imposters, and they'll both try to work each other to get something from each other until the time comes when they hate each other. Being means that you understand what it means to have no life of your own, which means you also understand what it means to have a life of your own, which means you have disappeared as the intellect that has been creating and recreating yourself day after day and year after year with all the torment. And I have used the right word, haven't I? Let's try it again. Your life is a torment, and you know it. Your wife knows it. Your husband knows it. Your friends sense it. Let me tell you, no man and no woman is that good an actor or actress. And what good does it do to be a superb actor or actress to the outside world when you see through your awful act? Why don't you go all the way in it? Why don't you? I'm not going to stop until I see the whole miserable mess inside myself. I am not going to lie anymore. And you go all the way over the years, taking it, getting battered and battered and battered, until you see that the battering that you have been taking is doing just one thing: getting rid of, knocking out of everything that has tormented you and nothing else. Your ideas of truth must be very strange that you resist it like you do. You must think that truth is like you. revengeful, hurtful. That's the way you are. Truth, now look how simple it is. Truth is not like you are. Therefore, drop all thoughts about what it is, and instead of thinking about it, welcome it. And you'll begin to see for yourself and from yourself with great relief that indeed, after all these years, there is something in this universe besides your petty, miserable, wretched little self. And then consciously you can say, thank God. Thank heaven for that. All your loneliness goes, all your problems go, because you have gone and something different has taken its place, and you understand what this different thing is. You understand it because you're living with it. All of us in the past have been horribly involved with our own sickness. Now, we fear to look at it, admit it. We don't like to talk about those incidents that happened years ago. I want you to know that this fear and reticence and refusal and this shame, I want you to know that shame is part of the hoax. That shame, you're glad that nobody, you're even, listen to me, please. You remember your parents found out that terrible thing you did, you're a kid 10, 15, 20, remember? Your parents found out, and only your mother and your father knew that horrible thing, whatever it is, you know what it is. And you were actually glad when they died because there is the last two people gone who knew what you did, right? Now, it seemed to be blocked out. That's how horrible it is, right? I want you to know that that's all a part of the devil's tricks to prevent you from waking up. Now, you are cooperating with that by having this fear and shame and just rolling around in it all day long and hoping that God isn't going to send you to hell for it. I want you to know that's part of the hoax. It is all wrong. Now, this is why what he said, one point was, well, what's the word? I use the word beautiful, but how do you describe something beautiful? The point that he brought out, it connects with what I just said, is that you must permit nothing to stand in the way of you working until you wake up. And that includes that horrible, egotistical shame that you have over what you were and what you did. See? That shame is clinging to the memory of the incident and keeping you alive as a false identity. See through this. Don't put up with it. I will absolutely guarantee you something. If you will let nothing stand in your way, one day you will be able to think of every horrible thing that you did in the past, and you will see it from pure memory. You will know it happened because it did. I guarantee you, absolutely, that in your inner freedom, there will be no sense of I connected with it at all. You will have canceled time connection with that mere memory, and you will understand what it means to live purely and freely right now. Don't let the devil trick you into being ashamed of what you did one time in the past. You're falling for his game. I tell you, you can remember the incident without being connected with it, and when you do it again, you'll say, thank heaven for heaven.